Everyone in the restaurant avoided one table. Not because the man there was loud, but because he could make you feel small without raising his voice. Every waiter had learned the lesson. Everyone, except the new girl who didn't know the rules yet. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Now, let's jump right back in the story. No one wanted to serve the man at the window table. At Belmonte Bistro, there were unwritten rules. One of them was simple. If the seating chart landed on table 7, you tried to trade. If you couldn't, you prepared yourself. Emily Carter noticed this within her first hour. She stood near the service station, holding a tray she didn't really need, watching how the staff moved. Everyone else looked confident. They knew where to step, when to speak, when to disappear. Emily still felt like a guest in someone else's space. She needed this job. That fact sat heavy in her chest. Rent was already late. Her savings were gone. Starting over in a new city after her father's death hadn't been part of the plan, but life rarely waited for plans to catch up. "Hey," a waitress named Jenna whispered, leaning close. "See that guy by the window?" Emily followed her gaze. A man sat alone, straight-backed, dressed in a dark suit that probably cost more than Emily made in a month. His phone lay untouched beside his plate. He wasn't scrolling. He wasn't distracted. He was just waiting. "That's Daniel Blackwood," Jenna said quietly. "Real estate money. Big money. He comes here a lot." "What's wrong with him?" Emily asked. Jenna gave a tired smile. "Nothing. And everything. He's rude, cold, makes you feel small. Management lets it slide because he spends a lot." Emily nodded slowly. She didn't like gossip, but she understood warnings. Across the room, Daniel Blackwood noticed the delay. He always did. Time mattered to him. Not because he was impatient, at least not in his own mind, but because waiting reminded him of how little control he had over people. Money bought access, comfort, options. It didn't buy care. He watched the staff avoid his table with practiced ease. He recognized it. The way people pretended not to see. The way politeness disappeared when there was nothing to gain. It didn't surprise him anymore. It just confirmed what he already believed. When no one approached after several minutes, his jaw tightened. Emily adjusted her apron. She told herself it was just another table. Just another customer. But something about the quiet tension around table 7 made her pause. Her life had taught her to stay small. To not invite trouble. To survive by blending in. But it had also taught her something else. Avoiding people didn't make things easier. It only delayed the moment you had to face them. She picked up her notepad and walked toward the window. Each step felt louder than the last. "Good evening," she said, stopping at the table. "Welcome to Belmonte. My name is Emily. I'll be serving you tonight." Daniel looked up. He had already prepared the first sentence he would say, something sharp, something dismissive. But it didn't come out. She wasn't smiling too much. She wasn't apologizing for the wait before he mentioned it. She was just standing there, calm, waiting. "You're late," he said finally. "Yes," Emily replied. "I'm sorry about that." Her voice was steady. Not defensive. Not fearful. He glanced at her name tag. "You're new." "I am." That annoyed him more than he expected. New meant mistakes. "Do you know what you're doing?" he asked. Emily didn't react the way he thought she would. "Yes," she said. "And if I don't, I'll ask." That answer threw him off. He exhaled slowly. "Water. And give me a minute." She nodded and walked away. No rushing. No attitude. Just quiet movement. Daniel watched her go, unsettled by the absence of tension he usually caused. Emily returned with the water and waited. He scanned the menu, though he already knew it. He came here often enough. "What's the special?" he asked. She told him. Clearly. Without embellishment. He tested her with a few pointed questions. She answered all of them. "You don't seem nervous," he said. "I am," she replied honestly. "I just don't think it helps much." That almost made him laugh. Almost. Emily placed the order and stepped away, her heart pounding harder than she wanted to admit. She didn't know why she cared so much about getting this right. Maybe because she had spent too long feeling like one mistake would ruin everything. In the kitchen, Jenna pulled her aside. "Are you okay?" "I think so." "He didn't say anything?" "Not yet." Jenna shook her head. "Be careful." Emily nodded, though she wasn't sure what being careful meant anymore. When the food came out, everything was correct. Temperature, presentation, timing. Daniel noticed. He also noticed how Emily checked in without hovering. How she didn't flinch when he looked at her directly. How she treated him the same way she treated every other table. Midway through the meal, he found himself searching for something to criticize. "You forgot my bread," he said. Emily checked the table. She hadn't. "It's right here," she said calmly, pointing to the side plate. "Would you like more?" There was no edge to her voice. No satisfaction. Just facts. He looked away. The rest of the meal passed in a strange quiet. Not comfortable. Not hostile. Just unfinished. When Emily cleared the plate, Daniel finally spoke again. "You're either brave," he said, "or you don't know who I am." Emily paused. "I know who you are," she said, "but I don't think it matters much when I'm doing my job." That answer stayed with him longer than he expected. Emily walked back to the service station, her hands shaking now that it was over. She didn't feel victorious. She felt tired, but also steady. Daniel sat alone for a moment after she left. No one had spoken to him like that in a long time. Not without wanting something in return. Outside, the city lights reflected against the glass. Inside, something had shifted, quietly, without anyone noticing yet. If you're still watching, tap like, tell us where you're watching from, and make sure you're subscribed. This story isn't finished yet. Daniel Blackwood came back the next evening. Emily noticed him the moment he walked in. Not because he demanded attention. He didn't. He moved with the same controlled pace, same expression that never gave much away. But this time, he didn't hesitate at the door or scan the room with irritation. He simply nodded to the host and took his usual seat by the window. Table 7. Emily felt a small tightening in her chest. She told herself it meant nothing. Customers returned all the time. Still, she caught Jenna watching her with raised eyebrows. "Looks like he liked you," Jenna said under her breath. Emily didn't answer. She waited a few minutes before approaching, giving him the same distance she gave everyone else. When she finally reached the table, Daniel was already looking at her. "Good evening," she said. "Would you like the same water?" "Yes," he said. Then after a pause, "Please." She noticed the word immediately. She brought the water back and stood quietly waiting. "You can take the order," he said. As she wrote, she sensed something different. Not softer, exactly, but restrained. Like he was choosing his words instead of letting them fall wherever they wanted. When the food arrived, everything went smoothly. Too smoothly. That made Daniel uneasy. He had grown used to conflict. Used to people reacting to him. The calm made him restless, like he was missing a step he'd always taken before. When Emily checked in, he said, "The steak's a bit over." She looked at it. It wasn't. "Would you like me to replace it?" she asked anyway. He hesitated. "No," he said. "It's fine." Emily nodded and left. That should have been the end of it. But something inside him pushed. When she returned again, he said, "You don't seem to care how people talk to you." Emily stopped walking. "I care," she said. "I just choose what I respond to." He frowned. "That sounds convenient." "It's learned," she replied. That answer stayed in the air between them. Daniel leaned back in his chair. "So you let people walk over you?" "No," Emily said. "I just don't fight everyone." Her tone wasn't defensive. It was tired. He studied her more closely now. The faint dark circles under her eyes. The way she stood evenly, like she'd learned not to lean on anyone. "You won't last long here," he said. She met his eyes. "I've lasted through worse." He didn't ask what she meant. He didn't need to. Pain had a familiar shape. Later that evening, things went wrong. The kitchen backed up. Orders piled. A glass shattered near the bar. Tension spread fast. Emily moved quickly, doing her best to keep up. When she reached Daniel's table again, she was already bracing herself. This took too long, he said flatly. She nodded. You're right. That response caught him off guard. I can comp the dessert, she added. Or you can speak to the manager. For a moment he looked like he might explode. Instead he exhaled. Just leave it, he said. Emily hesitated. Are you sure? Yes. She turned to leave. Then he said, Why did you take my table yesterday? She stopped again. No one else wanted it, she said honestly. That's not an answer. She turned back. It is. He looked at her, waiting for more. I needed the hours, she added. And I don't like deciding who someone is before they speak. Daniel's jaw tightened. You think you understand me? No, she said. I just think there's usually a reason. That was the moment. Something in him snapped, not in anger, but in exhaustion. You have no idea, he said sharply. People pretend to care until they don't. They smile until it's inconvenient. And then they disappear. The words came out faster than he meant them to. Emily didn't step back. She lowered her voice. I'm not pretending. How would I know? He shot back. She thought for a second. You wouldn't. Not right away. Silence fell between them. Nearby tables pretended not to listen. Daniel stared at his plate. His appetite was gone. You should be careful, he said quietly. People take advantage of kindness. Emily nodded. I know. There was something in her voice that made him look up. She wasn't arguing. She wasn't correcting him. She was agreeing. I'm still here, she added. That doesn't mean I don't notice. He didn't respond. When the check came, he paid quickly and stood up. As he passed her, he stopped. You shouldn't waste your energy on people like me, he said. Emily met his eyes. I decide where my energy goes. He walked out without another word. Emily stood still for a moment after he left, her hands trembling slightly. Jenna rushed over. What happened? Nothing, Emily said. But that wasn't true. Across the street, Daniel paused before getting into his car. He felt something unfamiliar pressing at his chest. Not anger. Not regret. Recognition. Someone had seen through the noise and stayed anyway. And that unsettled him more than any confrontation ever had. Inside the restaurant, Emily returned to her work, trying to ignore the ache in her shoulders and the quiet weight settling in her chest. She had stood her ground. But she also knew something now. Kindness didn't always end cleanly. Sometimes, it opened doors you weren't ready to walk through. If this moment made you pause, tap like and tell us what you think. Was Emily right to keep engaging him? And make sure you're subscribed. The tension isn't over yet. Daniel didn't come back for a while. Emily noticed after the third evening. At first, she told herself it didn't matter. Customers came and went. Some were regulars, some weren't. But she caught herself glancing at the window table more often than she should have. Jenna noticed too. Maybe you scared him off, she said lightly. Maybe, Emily replied. But it didn't feel that simple. Work grew heavier. The restaurant stayed busy. Management tightened rules. A single mistake earned sharp looks instead of reminders. Emily worked longer shifts and took fewer breaks. She needed the money. She didn't have room for pride. Outside of work, her life narrowed. Sleep work. That was it. Daniel, meanwhile, filled his time with meetings. His company was in trouble. Not publicly, not yet, but the pressure was building. A deal he'd counted on fell apart. Lawyers started calling more often than usual. People spoke carefully around him. He didn't talk about it. He never had. At night, he replayed conversations he didn't want to remember. Words Emily had said that landed too close to the truth. I decide where my energy goes. It irritated him. And worse, it stayed with him. One evening, Daniel almost went back to the restaurant. He parked across the street, sat in his car, and watched the lights inside. Then he drove away. When he finally returned, it was unexpected. Emily was mid-shift, already tired, when she saw him step through the door. Her stomach tightened. He didn't look at her at first. He spoke briefly with the host and took his usual seat. Table 7. Emily waited longer than usual before approaching. When she did, Daniel looked up slowly. Good evening, she said. Evening. Nothing else. She took his order. He didn't challenge it. He didn't test her. The calm felt heavier than the arguments ever had. When she brought his food, he said, "You seem busy." "We are," she replied. Another pause. "You don't have to take my table," he said. She looked at him. "I know." He nodded once. As the night went on, pressure built around them. A large party complained loudly near the bar. A manager snapped at Emily for something that wasn't her fault. A tray slipped from someone's hands and shattered. Emily stayed quiet and kept moving. Daniel watched more than he ate. When she returned to his table again, he said, "They don't treat you well." Emily didn't answer right away. "They're stressed," she said finally. "That's not an excuse." She met his eyes. "I'm used to it." He frowned. "You shouldn't be." Her patience thinned. "You don't know what I should or shouldn't be," she said quietly. The words weren't angry. But they weren't gentle either. Daniel leaned back. "You defend everyone." "No," she said. "I just don't fight battles that won't change anything." He shook his head. "That's how people stay stuck." Her jaw tightened. "And constant anger fixes it?" "That did it." "You think I'm angry for no reason?" he asked. "I think you're carrying something," she said. "And you drop it on whoever's nearby." Silence. Daniel stood abruptly. "That's enough," he said. "I didn't come here to be analyzed." Emily stepped back. "I didn't analyze you. You spoke." He reached for his wallet. "Just bring the check." She nodded and walked away, her hands shaking again, but this time, not from fear. When she returned, he paid without looking at her. "You should be careful," he said as he stood. "People don't like being told the truth." She looked at him. "I wasn't trying to tell you anything." He paused. "Then why does it feel like you did?" He left before she could answer. Emily stood there, feeling the familiar mix of regret and relief. She hadn't meant to push. But she also hadn't meant to disappear. Later that night, the manager pulled her aside. "You need to be careful with certain guests," he said. "We can't afford complaints." Emily nodded. "I understand." But she wasn't sure she did anymore. Daniel spent the night restless. He told himself she was just a waitress. Someone passing through his life. Still, he found himself wanting to explain. Wanting to take back words he hadn't meant to throw. But pride held him still. Emily lay awake too. She replayed the moment again and again, wondering if she'd crossed a line. Wondering why it mattered so much. Both of them told themselves the same lie. It's better to keep distance. Life, however, had other plans. A company event was scheduled at Belmonte the following week, one Daniel couldn't avoid. And Emily was assigned to the floor. Their paths were about to cross again. Whether they were ready or not. The private event took over most of the restaurant. Long tables. Reserved signs. A guest list full of people who spoke confidently and listened carefully, always calculating who mattered in the room. Emily arrived early. She had been assigned to the main floor, which meant more eyes, more pressure, and no room for mistakes. She tied her apron tighter than usual and checked her section twice. When Daniel walked in, she felt it before she saw him. He was dressed like he always was, clean lines, neutral colors, but there was something different in the way he carried himself. He looked tired. Not from lack of sleep, but from carrying too much for too long. They noticed each other at the same time. There was no greeting, no nod. Just a brief moment of recognition before work took over. Emily focused on the guests. Daniel focused on the table in front of him. They were placed closer than either of them wanted. Daniel's group was seated in Emily's section. There was no way around it. The night moved quickly. Orders came fast. Questions followed. Emily stayed calm and professional, even when the pressure crept up her spine. Daniel watched her handle it. He noticed how she listened more than she spoke. How she corrected mistakes quietly. How she absorbed frustration without letting it change her tone. Halfway through the evening, one of Daniel's associates complained loudly about the food. Emily apologized and offered to fix it. Daniel cut in. "It's fine. We're fine." The associate looked surprised. Emily looked at Daniel for a second, then nodded and stepped away. Later, when the room grew louder and the lights dimmed slightly, Daniel found himself standing near the bar, away from his table. Emily passed by with a tray. He spoke without thinking. "You're handling this well." She stopped. "Thank you." They stood there for a moment, both aware they were stealing time. "You didn't have to step in earlier," she said. "I know," he replied. "I wanted to." That was the closest he'd come to an explanation. A sudden storm hit outside. Rain slammed against the windows. Wind rattled the glass. Some guests checked their phones. Others sighed in frustration. By the time the event ended, it was clear the storm wasn't passing quickly. Several staff members left early. A few guests stayed, waiting it out. Daniel remained. Emily finished closing tasks and noticed he was still there, seated near the window again. "You can wait inside as long as you need," she said. "The rain's bad." "I noticed," he replied. Silence stretched between them. "Do you want anything else?" she asked. "No," he said. Then added, "Maybe coffee." She brought it and sat down briefly at the opposite end of the booth, not close, not far. "I don't usually stay this late," she said. "I don't usually talk this much," he replied. That almost made her smile. "Almost." "You were right," he said after a moment. "About what?" "I am carrying something." She didn't respond right away. She didn't want to push. "My wife died 3 years ago," he continued. "Cancer. Long process." Everyone said the right things. Then they moved on. Emily nodded. "That happens." "I didn't," he said. She looked at him now. "You don't have to." He exhaled slowly. "I don't know how not to be angry." She considered that. "I don't think anger is the problem," she said. "I think it's the only thing that stayed. That landed quietly." He looked at her, not guarded this time. "What about you?" he asked. She hesitated. "My dad got sick fast," she said. No warning. One day he was fine. Then he wasn't. "I'm sorry." "So was everyone else," she replied. "Until I had to figure things out alone." They sat in silence, the rain filling the space. "You don't treat people badly," Daniel said. "Even when you could." She shrugged. "I know how it feels." Outside, thunder rolled. Inside, something shifted again, but this time, it felt fragile. Eventually, Daniel stood. "I should go." "Drive safe," she said. He paused. "Emily." "Yes. Thank you for staying the same." She didn't know how to respond to that. When he left, the restaurant felt emptier than before. Emily locked up later than usual. As she walked home in the rain, she felt something unfamiliar, hope mixed with fear. Connection always came with risk. And she wasn't sure either of them was ready for what came next. If this quiet moment stayed with you, tap like and share what you felt. And don't forget to subscribe, because the hardest part is still ahead. Things didn't fall apart all at once. They unraveled slowly. Daniel stopped coming to the restaurant again, not because he wanted to avoid Emily, but because everything else demanded more from him. His company was facing legal pressure now. Meetings stacked. Advisors spoke in careful tones. Every decision felt like it carried weight he couldn't afford to misplace. Emily noticed his absence, but she didn't ask about it. She had learned that people came and went for reasons that rarely had anything to do with her. Still, the empty space at table 7 felt louder than it should have. Life didn't pause. One evening, Emily was called into the manager's office. "We've received a complaint," he said. Her stomach tightened. "About what?" A guest felt uncomfortable. "Said you crossed a line." Became personal. She knew immediately. "Was it Daniel Blackwood?" she asked. The manager nodded. He didn't file it directly. But his name came up. Emily felt heat rise to her face. "That conversation happened after hours," she said. "He stayed. I didn't push." The manager sighed. "I believe you. But we can't afford issues like this." "What does that mean?" Emily asked. "It means you'll be moved to day shifts. Less exposure. For now." Emily nodded slowly. She didn't argue. She didn't explain further. She went back to work feeling smaller than she had in weeks. Across the city, Daniel sat in his office, staring at an email he hadn't meant to send. His legal team had advised documenting everything. Conversations. Interactions. Any situation that could be misunderstood. He had followed instructions without thinking. Only later did it hit him what that meant for Emily. He tried to call the restaurant. No answer. The next day he showed up unannounced. Emily wasn't on the floor. He waited. When he finally spotted her exiting the kitchen, he stood. "Emily," he said. She stopped. They stood facing each other in the middle of the restaurant, suddenly aware of how exposed they were. "I need to talk to you," he said. She looked tired. "I'm working." "I know. I won't take long." She nodded once. "Okay." They stepped outside. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he said immediately. "The complaint. I was advised." "So you let them file it," she said. "I didn't think." "That's the problem," she replied quietly. "You didn't think about me at all." He opened his mouth, then closed it. She continued, "I trusted you to be honest. Not careful." "I was trying to protect myself," he said. "I know," she replied. "Everyone does." There was no anger in her voice. Just distance. "I got moved off night shifts," she added. "Less money." His chest tightened. "I didn't know." "You didn't ask," she said. They stood there in silence. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "That doesn't fix it." "But I am." Emily looked at him. "I didn't expect perfection. I expected respect." He nodded. "You deserved it." She took a step back. "I need to go." "Emily." She stopped. "This is where I step away." And she did. Daniel stood alone on the sidewalk, realizing something too late. He had chosen safety over honesty. And it had cost him the one connection he hadn't planned but needed. Days passed. Emily focused on her work. She took extra shifts when she could. She stopped checking the window table entirely. Daniel tried to distract himself with work. It didn't work. Every quiet moment brought her back. Her steadiness, her refusal to disappear, the way she listened without trying to fix him. He remembered something she'd said early on. "I decide where my energy goes." He realized then what he hadn't done. He hadn't chosen courage. One evening, Daniel returned to Belmonte. Not as a customer. He spoke to the manager. "I need to clear something up," he said. The manager listened carefully. The next day, Emily was called in again. "We reviewed the situation," the manager said. "The complaint's been withdrawn. You'll be back on your regular schedule." Emily blinked. "Withdrawn?" "Yes." "Mr. Blackwood took responsibility." She nodded slowly. "Okay." That evening, Daniel waited at table 7. Emily didn't rush over. When she finally approached, he stood. "I'm not here to eat," he said. "I'm here to apologize. Properly." She didn't interrupt. "I chose protection over honesty," he continued. "I won't do that again." She studied him. "I didn't do this expecting forgiveness," he added. "I did it because it was right." She exhaled slowly. "Thank you," she said. That was all. He didn't push further. Weeks later, Daniel came back again. This time, it was quieter. Simpler. No tension. No testing. Just conversation. They didn't fix everything. They didn't promise anything. They learned how to speak honestly without guarding every word. Table 7 stopped being avoided. Not because Daniel changed overnight, but because he stopped dropping his pain on strangers. And Emily? She stayed kind. Not because she was naive, but because she understood something most people didn't. Empathy wasn't about excusing behavior. It was about choosing not to become what hurt you. If this story made you feel something, tap like and tell us what stood out to you. And make sure you're subscribed, because the next story might remind you why kindness still matters.